Hey again, everyone. I'm Katie. I'm on the product marketing team at Census. I'll be your host today for operational analytics for sales. And as a super quick recap, you guys are probably familiar with Census, but Census is the only operational analytics platform and the leader in reverse ETL that helps you sync data from the warehouse to all your business tools so you can act and automate with confidence. And our agenda for the day is so over the next 40 minutes or so, Donny from our data team will give a quick overview of operational analytics and how it supercharges your sales team. And then he'll demo how to sync your data warehouse directly to Salesforce. And we love questions, feedback, comments whenever you want. So please do send us questions in the chat. We'll either answer them directly or in a Q&A section at the very end. So without further ado, I'll hand it off to Donny for a quick intro and a kickoff. Thanks, Donny.
Thanks, Katie. My name's, like Katie said, I'm Donny. I'm a customer data architect here at Census. Prior to Census, I was a head of data at a couple of companies, and super excited to kind of walk through the customer 360 use case with all of you. Before we do that, I want to quickly introduce kind of what operational analytics is. And operational analytics is taking the analytics that is living in your warehouse, in your data warehouse, and syncing that into the different business tools that you use. Specifically in the sales context, we're going to talk about Salesforce as a CRM, but you can think about kind of additionally, kind of if that's HubSpot or Pipedrive, whatever kind of CRM that you have, it's what Census wants to be able to do is to sync into that operational tools. So specifically, that's what Census is and wants to do. This is kind of the hub and spoke model in terms of what this data stack looks like. So you can see Fivetran is this spoke into the data warehouse, and Census is the spoke out. Kind of Fivetran being the ETL piece, and Census being the reverse. So why is this necessary? Well, in terms of how data gets into CRMs or into different business tools, it often looks like either one of these two things. One is that this spaghetti stack of point-to-point integrations that are difficult to maintain, and they might fail silently. And on the other side, there is just manual CSV uploads in the tools. So you can see this as like being data export 1, 2, all the way through 8, and that you want to go ahead and upload into your CRM. So there's clearly a lot of pain around this solution, and kind of want to also quickly talk about kind of the landscape in terms of why is operational analytics from the existing solutions. So when you think about kind of managing custom or if an in-house engineering build, that can cost a lot of time in terms of actually building as well as that maintenance time. In terms of customer data platforms, like that cost hampers scalability in terms of just as your user base grows, you're sending more data into the CRMs. And also it's like an event-based stream, similar to iPaaS, which is kind of handling different like individual record updates. And that can sometimes not scale very well to large volumes of data. And that doesn't have kind of the holistic observability features that you would expect that you can sync with confidence, like Katie said at the beginning. So operational analytics pulls that most recent data from that singular data definition that lives within that hub on that first slide. So that can just make it much easier to maintain in terms of that syncing over the high level of confidence in your data. New integrations can be configured and synced in minutes, as I'm about to show you. Costs are predictable and they don't penalize your business for growing. As your user base grows, the cost model will not scale as quickly as your user base. And that observability features, alerting, and scalability to your different use cases, that's all built into operational analytics. So I want to quickly pause there. I know that was a lot of content. Katie, are there any questions that have come in on the chat?
Not so far. Keep going, Donny. This is great.
Go ahead. Awesome. So what does sales do with operational analytics? So number one, this first kind of use case is the 360-degree customer record. Now that's just to say that like if you're looking at a customer in your CRM, you know kind of how that customer's actually been using the product. You're not just seeing the Salesforce entry that might be coming from the sales team, but you're also seeing kind of you're also seeing your product analytics data. You might be seeing some support ticket data, everything that can just inform a salesperson when they're actually contacting that customer about the context to which they're actually contacting them. The second piece is consistent reporting, and especially if we go back to these cases, a pain point that happens is that reports might not be in sync with each other across different tools, between a BI tool or versus like a Google Sheet that might be happening. That might not be in sync with the actual like Salesforce report that you want to be up to date with your customer base. And on the other side, like there is this concept of being able to score leads in terms of being able to give the sales team like high quality leads that have a high likelihood of converting. And this is kind of around that product led growth motion, to be able to use that product data and how your users are using the product to be able to identify which leads and to whom contacts would like reaching out to would make sense in terms of actually being able to purchase your product. So in terms of the demo that we have today, we're going to talk about this 360-degree use case in terms of being able to see different product data that's coming from this Jaffle Gaggle kind of demo data set that I've built. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and pull that up. So that's right here. Katie, would you mind just throwing this link in the chat? And then would love to just kind of go ahead and walk through these use cases within the Census product. So, and Katie, feel free to interrupt me too if there are any questions that come up.
Yeah, definitely. I want to reiterate that we welcome any questions at any time. So please do let us know in the question box or in the chat. Thank you.
So here I'm showing a census model. A census model is just a SQL query that's running against that hub, being the data source here. And what I'm going to be selecting here is just a number of users that are coming from like within this Jaffle Gaggle context. You can think about that as this Jaffle Gaggle data set as being just a business, a B2B business in which there are users that are using the product that we want to go ahead and populate into this report that lives here in Salesforce. So I want to just go ahead and set up a sync here. And what I want to do here is I have that data set that's living in that model. And I want to go ahead and sync that into Salesforce, and I want to sync that to the contact record. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is select that connection that I've already configured here, and I want to sync that into the contact object. And then what I want to do is I want to update I want to choose like the sync behavior that I want to do. I want to update the record if that contact, if it already exists. Otherwise, I want to create it. In this case, I want to go ahead and use our user ID, which is like our internal ID, as that external ID mapped here, which I've already set up on the Salesforce side to be unique and an external ID. And then I want to go ahead and map over the different fields that I want to send. So in this case, I just want to use this multiple and match over like the most recent event at. So when's the last time this user has interacted with our product, how many orders this user has placed, as well as like when that order happened, as well as like the first name of that user, like when's that most recent order, when did that first event happen, the first interaction with our platform, the number of events, and then that email, as well as this corporate email. This corporate email you're going to see in a little bit when we also sync to that account record. in terms of how we and I walked through that a little bit more within this blog post and within that DBT repository. But basically, we are grouping different users into different workspaces and then creating accounts. Great. So we have the ability to run a test here. But in this case, and that would send over one record to just be able to give you a high degree of confidence as you are setting up this sync. Census is designed so that that if you are a sales ops person, or if you are more on the sales side or like the business systems, you are able to handle this configuration without the need for kind of that custom engineering build that would need to happen. So I'm going to go ahead and run a sync here. Kind of as this is running, I want to quickly flag a couple of configuration pieces. Number one is that we can set this sync up to run on a schedule. So in terms of like the real benefit is that you can set this to run on a weekly, daily, hourly, all the way up to continuous, such that as soon as that data is transformed in your warehouse, you can have that go ahead and be reflected in Salesforce. And kind of the real value of Census is such that you can set up these syncs to run on a schedule, so you can have the confidence that they're actually being updated within the destination.
Quick question, Donny. So
Yeah.
from Mr. No, could we trigger the sync without having to go through the UI?
Yes, you can. We also have an API trigger here. And you would just send a post request to this URL, and that would go ahead and kick off a sync. We also have we have an Airflow operator, as well as like a prefect task and some helpful code that can integrate within your data engineering ecosystem to give you a high degree of confidence and make sure that you don't actually have to go into the UI to kick off these syncs.
Great, thanks, Donny. And one more question. Have you had cases of using Google BigQuery as the data warehouse?
Yes, absolutely. So we support all the major cloud data warehouses. So BigQuery is like a large use case that we see, and Snowflake. Those would be kind of some of the large ones. We also do support Databricks in terms of kind of that lakehouse model, and then real-time analytics coming from Rockset as well.
Yep, that's great. And to add on a little bit to that, if you're part of the Google Cloud environment, we also do support using Looker looks as models in Census. So we'll pull the underlying SQL from that look. And we also support Google Sheets as a source, as well as the destination. And other Google destinations will include Google Ads and Google Analytics.
Yeah, no, it's a great call out, Katie. Thank you. We have like the activity, so that this will show like if like a schedule is changed or if a new mapping is added. So it kind of gives you an audit log of this sync, as well as like the different alerts that we will go ahead and send an email alert if different thresholds are met, in terms of just giving you that high degree of confidence that these syncs are working. Great, so it looks like the sync has succeeded. This is kind of the sync history that you'll get for every single run. We have an invalidation check here that would surface if that primary key, that external ID, that user ID, if that was null or if that was duplicated, you'd be able to drill into this. And otherwise, as you are here with this rejected record, and this was rejected by the actual destination API. This was an invalid email address because there was a comma in the email. So kind of Salesforce's, because this is an email address type, it flags this, and you're able to go ahead and see this as a rejected record.
Hey, Donny, as you're talking about these rejected records, question here. Do you connect to observability tools like PagerDuty?
Yes. So the way that we integrate with like those tools right now is via like an email alias. So you can go ahead and set up an email alias on the PagerDuty side that Census can send the email to, and that would go ahead and create that in PagerDuty for you.
Great, thanks, Donny.
Yeah, no problem. So I want to just go ahead and here to this contacts piece, and now I have like all of these contacts that are living here. So if I wanted to go ahead and now this can be sliced and diced, by like the sales team in terms of, okay, great, I want to sort by the most recent users that have like just come onto the platform. And now I'm able to see kind of when that activity is, or if I want to go ahead and like group by the number of events, I can go ahead and do that on the Salesforce side. And you see that specifically with some of these older contacts, I can just drill in, and then now I have all of the ability to add a task, log a call. All of this data is living at the fingertips of the sales team to be able to act on this 360-degree view of the customer that comes from this product usage data. So great, like that's that contact. But really what we're really interested in here is being able to reach out to that account to turn this into an actual opportunity that we want to sync over. So in this case, I have like all the accounts, which are like that corporate email is that name. And then I have the user IDs that are that first user ID, like the most active user ID and the most orders user ID. And the reason why I surfaced those is because those are fairly good indicators in this context for who would be a good actual contact to reach out associated with this account to go ahead and potentially open a sales conversation with. So here I'm going to go ahead and configure a sync. I'm going to do that same step. I'm going to go ahead and sync that to the account object now. For that unique identifier here, I'm going to go ahead and use that corporate email. I'm also going to map over the email again here as that account name, just because we don't have an account name. I'm going to match over the number of users associated. I'm also going to map over the number of users. Number of users corporate. I'm going to map over the number of associated events. And kind of as I'm going through and kind of mapping over some of these fields, please feel free to drop any more questions in the chat, and Katie can go ahead and let me know. Number of users, number of associated events, number of orders. And then I'm going to go ahead and also map over the orders. And I want that first user, first event corporate, first user.
Hey, Donny, question here.
Yeah.
What kind of API consumption do Census syncs contribute to Salesforce?
It's a great question. So the way that Census works is we will utilize the batch API or the bulk API in Salesforce's case, and limit the amount of the set of records that we actually will send over. Additionally, we will we perform kind of that state tracking for your data set within your warehouse, such that we're only sending over the changed records. So when we are at the lowest limit possible in terms of how we are actually utilizing the Salesforce API. Additionally, and I can point this out on the configuration step as well, but you have the ability to change the batch size that we are actually syncing over as well.
That's great to know, Donny. And then one more question is, do you have a use case or an example of using Pardot with lead scoring?
Yes, so that Pardot is like we would sync to that the prospects, like in terms of we would sync that into prospects on Pardot, and that's absolutely a potential that we could go ahead and perform that lead scoring. And I do believe we have a customer that's actually doing that so far as well. So do you want to quickly go to that batch size? So that's going to default to the largest batch size that we can send, which is 10,000 records. But you can go ahead in here and set this batch size if, for example, you might have some Salesforce processes that are built on top of like a record change or a record being written. like Salesforce will put its hands up and not be able to accept another upload. So oftentimes what we'll see is lowering the batch size sometimes to go ahead and remedy that. Hope that answered that question. So one thing that I did want to show is just like how that shows up in the activity stage. So if I want to go ahead and set this up to daily at like midnight, so I'm going to go ahead and save that here. I can go to this activity log and then reload it, and then like you'll see that my Donny had changed the schedule from daily to daily at this time. And then that will go ahead and be visible to whatever users are within the Census UI, and looking at the sync, wondering kind of what kind of changes happened here. Great, so it looks like the sync has already succeeded. We have a rejected record, which is that, it's that same rejected record that no pain, no gain, because it wasn't able to find that contact. So great, I can just go ahead and here and reload this accounts page. And now I see like for that specific account, what those like which users were the first users, as well as what users were like the active users, or which users had those most orders. So if I wanted to go ahead and just sort by like the most active accounts, I could go ahead and actually reach out to that most active user, and for this Cranky Yankees like account, and then go ahead and reach out and initialize a sales conversation. Great, and kind of we were able to kind of, one thing that's worth flagging is that kind of all of this, we were able to walk through that, like both of those use cases in about 15 minutes. So in terms of getting Census set up, as in terms of that data modeling piece, as long as that data is properly modeled, that Census setup can be very swift. So you can really start acting on that data that you have to be able to just make more, like to optimize the sales motion based on the different data that you have access to. And great, I want to just go ahead and pop into the slideshow again. And like just quickly pause here if there are any questions, and we can kind of go ahead and talk through those. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Donny, for showing those use cases. We have some questions coming in the chat, so please do continue to ask questions, and we'll answer them during the Q&A section right now.
Additionally, we do have kind of, this is like that sales use case in terms of sending data for different contacts or users, as well as like for those different accounts. We also have a webinar next week, which is for marketing, and kind of you'll be able to find all of the events that we're holding in terms of like these webinars and everything else on the getcensus.com/events page, and under resources you can find that here.
Yeah, great call out, Donny. The events page is on our website, and then we also have a newsletter for a Census synthetic events.
And then you're also able to sync yourself some swag if you'd like. So by like going in and editing a Census model, you can go ahead and sync yourself a cool t-shirt like Charlie did.
Yeah, have you heard of any other company offering you free swag for writing SQL? Don't think so. The shirts are nice too. People have said that they're extremely comfortable and very unique for tech swag. So it's not just another tech t-shirt.
Katie, have we gotten any questions in the chat?
No questions in the chat. But let me ask you a question, Donny. So how long does it take to set up Census?
Yeah, so I would say that kind of as I was mentioning, I think something like a lot of the work comes in the data modeling piece, as well as just like the configuration setup. And that we generally see that take just a couple, like if you have the necessary permissions, it can be on the in the order of minutes. And then if you need to loop in different permissions or different access, that might take some time. But if you have everything, like all the keys to the castle, you can set up and get a sync going within like 30 minutes or an hour, is generally what we see with customers.
Awesome. That's great. And then, oh, we have a question in the question box. Can I try Census for free? How does that work?
Yes, you can. You can go ahead and I can actually quickly show. If you go to actually, I'll just go to the website. If you go here to log in, you can go ahead and create an account for free. We have a free 14-day trial, as well as a free plan. That's in kind of the way that census pricing works, is based on the destination fields. So which record, like what are those fields that you're actually sending over to the destination? And so you can, like, we have many customers that are using Census for free, across a number of destinations as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Donny. Do you want to talk a little bit about Census pricing? Oh, here's a question. So hold on that thought. What is the lift to change a data warehouse source? If we had data in a Postgres database and Snowflake, can we use both of those?
Interesting question. I would want to, like with my customer data architect hat on, I would want to dig into why, like what is the root, what is the reason why there are two different data sources for your customers? Because kind of that, going back to that first slide, Census works best with a singular warehouse in terms of like in your case, I think it was BigQuery. So that would probably be ideal to have all of that. However, if that is the case, where like certain data might be in Postgres, certain data might be in BigQuery, we can kind of work in terms of how that would need to happen, to go ahead and sync that data out. You can connect to both sources within Census, but you're not able to join across sources. So we would need to figure out what would be the best path forward. And that would be a great call out for just like having a customer call with the customer data architect for us.
Yeah, thanks, Donny. This wasn't the person who was using BigQuery, but if you want to tell us what source you're using, we can give you some thoughts on that as well. And if you like Donny's presentation, you can chat with him directly. You can schedule more time with him. And an hour-long call with Donny is on the books.
Which is that brings me to a great call out as well for our fast-growing operational analytics Slack community, which is operationalanalytics.club. And like I'm in that Slack, as well as like DBT Slack, locally optimistic. So feel free to send me a message. We'd be happy to chat through any of these sales use cases or any specifics. So would be more than happy to have those conversations.
Yeah, the OA Club's really been great. It's definitely vendor agnostic. We don't push anything about Census there. It's really just a place for data practitioners to talk about, the problems that they're facing, how they're solving their problems, any issues they're running into, best practices. So definitely super open, super welcoming. So definitely encourage anyone here to join.
A lot of lively discussions as well, in there, in terms of like, there was a good one yesterday about kind of like what are the best resources to learn SQL, and I think there were about like 8 different ones, and some interesting conversations about kind of metric definitions and how that actually interacts with the business stakeholders and what that needs to look like.
For sure. You're welcome, Annika. Thanks for joining us. She said, great workshop.
Thank you.
Well, let's go back to that question. I think I was asking about how much Census costs, if you want to quickly go over the pricing.
Yeah, totally. So kind of like I was mentioning in terms of the destination fields, that's kind of the key differentiator between the different pricing plans that we have. And then we have a like very transparent pricing that's here in terms of like what this looks like. One of the key things in terms of like to get back at that the cost not scaling as your user base scales. All of the paid plans have unlimited source rows and kind of just key off of those destination fields. And then there are different differentiators between growth and business being kind of that real-time syncs. So you're able to see that here. And then in terms of certain specific connections for destinations might be a difference between a business plan and a platform plan. And so we would definitely love to be happy to, if like you don't get a clear answer from this page, feel free to reach out to myself or on the demo page, and we'd be happy to chat.
Thanks, Donny. Do you want to talk a little bit about alternative use cases for marketing or customer success?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you give me a second, I'm going to quickly stop sharing and pull up another slideshow that I have. Cool.
And do keep asking questions if there's anything else you're curious about. Thanks everyone who's asked questions so far.
So one of the interesting things too in terms of the marketing use case is that you're able to use those definitions, those singular definitions that live in your data warehouse or live in your data hub, to be able to enable marketing to best segment like different ad campaigns in terms of like truly personalizing the messaging that you have. And kind of different use cases that we see are being able to exclude existing customers from your ad spend, to be able to create lookalike audiences based on your existing customers. If a customer set has an upcoming, like their contract is expiring or like their usage is growing very fast, you could go ahead and retarget those for kind of more upsell messaging. And then you also have the ability to optimize based on offline conversions that might happen from magic moments. So in the Jaffle Gaggle example, placing an order within the product UI might be a magic moment that we would want to let either Google, Facebook be able to optimize for, to be able to find more customers like that. And then a huge benefit of Census is that you're able to sync that across that same kind of audience definition across multiple platforms, based on the different criteria that you set for those definitions. And if you haven't seen it, there's an awesome video that shows us doing that. But definitely tune in if you're more interested about marketing use cases next week when we have another webinar. And then in terms of customer success, kind of that often boils down to customer success or customer support, being able to have that context for the customer. So oftentimes it's that similar kind of customer 360-degree view that then you can perform ticket routing, or you can automate scheduling check-in calls or health calls based on the data that you have. within your data warehouse, such that you can go ahead and make sure that your customers are using your product successfully.
Cool. Thanks, Donny. I put the Census segments video in the chat as well.
Awesome.
If you're a fan of Space Invaders, you got to check that one out. Cool. Anyone else have any other questions? Give you a couple minutes, but if not, we will sign off. And don't forget to get your free t-shirts from us at Census. We would love to send you a SQL shirt for writing SQL.
Yeah, thanks to everyone who hopped on and everyone who's still here. Really appreciate you spending your either morning or afternoon with us, and definitely do hop in the operational analytics Slack. Very excited about that.
Yep, just dropped a link to that in the chat as well. So join us in our Slack. We hope to hear from you and chat with you. Thank you everyone for joining today. Appreciate your time. Thanks all. Bye.